Hello. So it's funny, I was just talking with my sister and we were talking about a bunch of different topics, but tarot addiction came up, which is something that I've never made a video about it, and I've really I've deleted or privated a lot of my videos, so there's only a few that I have up still, but I don't think I've spoken about it deliberately on this channel. And I thought that I should share my experience because I've noticed that my YouTube feed, which is really it's the main social media that I engage with and I engage with it a lot. I need to go on a social media cleanse and I think I will be forced to because I'm starting university again. this summer, and it's starting this week. Actually, it starts today. It's the first day of May, first day of a new month. But yeah, and I think, I was just noticing, I was talking about my experiences, and I figured that now would be a good time to maybe share my experience with tarot addiction and just a couple other things when it comes to being in this world. And I'm realizing that now I want to be careful with the terms that I use because we all know that we're in a time in the world right now where people are being introduced to many different belief systems and are also coming back to older belief systems. And we're just going through a time of questioning what we believe, figuring out what works for us. And I believe, hopefully, moving to a space where you're just able to live a life that you enjoy. And it's just about being loving, being kind, being compassionate, and being there for people and being there for yourself. But right now, we are in an interesting phase of a lot of a lot of identities around your belief systems. And we've seen a rise in spirituality, though spirituality really is it's really anything or everything, like, and so I guess maybe then like new age spirituality, which I don't have a problem with. I'm just trying to use specific terms because I realize that it's hard. I think we need more language. But there has been like an awakening. Absolutely. There's been an awakening over the past few years, and I think that COVID really like brought it up, and it's changed the world. We've all been changed, and because of that, many of us are now beginning to explore things in a more open way that are not old, but just are new for many of us, at least in this cycle of life. Um, and for me, I'm just going to talk about my personal experience. So for me, COVID was a trying time, as it was for many of us, and it was also a really good time because it uh, woke me up to not like the way of the world, but just woke me up to what was happening in my life, to where I was at, and the honesty, the brutal honesty. And I had to face myself. I had to face my shadow, if you will. But honestly, I hit rock bottom and I just had to get real. During COVID, I got into my first ever relationship. And in that relationship, I faced sexual violence. Um, and that was something that I didn't really come to terms with or even really understand and recognize until I was ending the relationship. And it was during the breakup period that I came to the realization through a discussion with my partner at the time, with my boyfriend at the time, that I was a victim of sexual assault uh, and of basically, I guess, like a relationship, uh, interrelational like abuse or something like that. But it was very complicated. It's not abuse in the typical way that we get to see. And I don't even really feel super comfortable using that term. I'm not going to judge myself for saying that term, but I don't know if I feel super comfortable with saying even abuse because it's just more complicated than that. Um, and I wouldn't, like, consider the partner abusive, so maybe I won't use that word. I'm still trying to figure out how to speak about that time in my life because it's complicated, you know? And it's so strange because from the outside, whenever we hear discussions or whenever I would hear discussions about assault, I was always very clear on where I stood. I was always, I was there with the victim. And yeah, I just never felt like from the outside, it's like there's never a question, when you have compassion. But then once you're in it, and especially when it's in a relationship, it's so complicated. It's so complicated, it's not funny. And we live yeah, anyways, this is not about assault, but as you can see, assault is a complicated conversation. But anyways, so yeah, my whole journey, and I'll call it a spiritual journey because it is, but everything is for me, and this is my personal experience. So everything for me is spiritual, like this charger and like this and science but it's not spiritual in the sense where you have to conform to a specific way of being that right now is being shown as what spirituality is. I mean spiritual in like just the bare bones sense of the word because I don't have another word to use for that. But I just mean like everything is spirit. Everything is an expression of spirit. So no matter like however you come into this world is spiritual and you don't need to do anything to become spiritual. You don't need to put on crystals. You don't need to start doing chants or yoga or following this goddess or this god, or you don't need to do anything. You're spiritual all on your own. Like, you just are. It's just, like, there's no way to possibly not be. That's how I see it at this point. I like to try and remove it from any type of system, from any type of institution, from any type of map that you have to follow because and my sister put it in such great terms. I was talking to her, it's like the problem is that the problem is with religion, and not that there's anything wrong with your specific beliefs or anything like that if you are religious, but uh, the problem is then I guess I should use another word. It's just institutions right now. Institutions and your faith, I think, are a messy mix. And I'll say that for me, institutions and my faith is not it's not a good mix because for me my faith is personal. It's something that cannot be taught to me or told to me or shown to me by anybody. It's not something that I can do wrong. It's not something that I can be removed from or taken away from. It's something that has nothing to do with anybody but me and my faith and my relationship with life and being alive and being and having a spirit and like and whatever I know and exist within at the time and all that I don't know, but it has nothing to do with anything other than me. It's personal. It's very, very personal. And I grew up with religion, with Christianity. My family on my dad's side is Christian. So I grew up already with that basis. So I was already introduced to the concept of God in terms of having like a name. But I've always been somebody that's always believed in something. I've never not believed in anything. So it wasn't super I didn't grow up like in fight mode against having religious beliefs because I already believed in something. I did, however, grow up in conflict with my religious beliefs because I'm queer. So, being queer, being gay, being bisexual, and also having Christianity in the mix was not fun because it was already inherent that that was not cool, right? So I grew up with that complex around being queer and having to figure out what was wrong with me because I felt that something was wrong with me. Um, and that was the thing I dealt with pretty much up until like well, through middle school, really, I still had a problem with it. And then by high school, I became non-denominational is how I started to call myself, and, got really separated from religion as an institution. And during that time in the world, we were also beginning to move. We had already been moving away from religion, especially Christianity was already going through a phase of high critique, but, especially amongst, like, people my age, it wasn't super crazy to not believe in, not believe in God, and actually atheism was very much so, like, the thing of that time. I don't know if anybody would remember that. I'm 22, so, like, I'm just trying to date you along my path of what my because we've actually gone through so many interesting phases of beliefs in such a short amount of time, if you think about it, at least from what I'm remembering about my childhood, like, uh, yeah, when I was in school, I went to a Catholic middle school, so uh I was surrounded by people who had beliefs or were growing up in a space also with belief systems, but we were all, like, questioning things, and, nobody was super strict, at least none of my friends. I don't really remember anybody, like, having, like, super strict beliefs, um, and yeah, we were also growing up with the rise of the not the rise of the, but with, like, a real like, the movement of queer people was evolving, and we were getting more conversations, interesting conversations going and learning more about just how diverse we exist as a human being, species, and all these things. So, yeah, by the time I was in high school, I had already began to I had moved away from religion as an institution because I was beginning to accept myself for who I was as a queer person. So, that self-love journey meant detaching from religion, and I was also going through things, from, yeah, with religion in relation to family and having to go through that, and I was a teenager, so overall, everything was like a big shedding, a constant death cycle, and just a lot. And so during that time, I was not atheist, but I was in a space of separation and kind of lostness. Like, it was kind of a sad time. Being a teenager, it's super interesting because it was also the most creative. I would say, especially when it comes to writing, that I've ever been. It was also the most ambitious I have ever been. When it comes to living on the track of like of society and like working my way up the ladder, I was like super ambitious as a teenager. I was like participating in writing camps and all of that. So I was on track in my life, but spiritually I did not really have a life. I didn't have like a spiritual life, and I'm using that term again because I don't have another word, even though everything is spiritual. But I was just in a phase where I didn't have a relationship. Like, I knew that I believed in God ultimately and in spirit, though spirit was not a term that I used back then at all. It was mainly God. So I knew that I believed in God, but I wasn't talking to God because I was pissed, because I was traumatized from my childhood, and I felt abandoned, and I felt unloved because of, what religion has done to queer people and the way it's isolated queer people from their relationships with spirit and whatever. So, yeah, I was feeling upset about that as a teenager and feeling just very lonely and unloved. So I didn't have a relationship with God, though I believed ultimately, and there would always be ways in which spirit would kind of slip back into my life softly and gently, but I didn't really engage. And so that was like all throughout my teens. Then when I got into university, I became a part of a friend group where there were quite a few girls who were religious. Or maybe they would use spiritual or non-denominational, but they believed in God, and they were more loud. They were more outspoken about it, and more and they like went to church even sometimes. And that was very new for me because I hadn't been around that in a very, very long time. Like basically since middle school. And even then people weren't super serious about it. But to see like grown up women, because by that time I was 18 and up, so grown up, to see people who were not being told to do this, but were doing this on their own, that had beliefs like that, that was interesting, and it was triggering in some ways, but I've never thought about it up until now really, actually, but that was actually, I think, probably the introduction to me getting back into a relationship with spirit, not so much God yet. That really I needed to do a lot of healing around that to even be able to use the term God comfortably. But yeah, with spirit, that kind of began to happen a little bit because I was around people who were in that energy and who had a relationship more openly without shame. And it didn't seem to exist in an energy of trauma for them, and they also were not judgy and not rude or mean and also had their own things, and so I felt comfortable, and so even though I didn't end up actually exploring anything actively with them, I did feel more comfortable admitting that I believed in God or that I believed in something else, and I could just have these conversations a little bit more easily with them, even though I wouldn't allow myself to sink in really, but I did feel comfortable being a spiritual person around them, if that makes sense. Anyways, so yeah, as time goes on, COVID hits. Um, I really go deep into the dumps. And just, depression and anxiety, all that, but really like depression during COVID. And then I got into a relationship, and that relationship, like I said, ended with uh, me being uh, with assault and all of that. So having to deal with that. Um, and by the end of that year, I had ended most of the friendships that I had made during the beginning of university, and I had also began this spiritual awakening. And not to be corny, because I know that that term can feel like it's being said a lot, but it's being said a lot because I don't know, you guys, like I actually do believe something happened and like a lot of people went through a literal awakening, because I can tell you, like, I literally did. I did, because I don't know what happened, and I remember specifically, I remember one day where I was laying in my bed in my dorm room, not my dorm room, but it was basically a dorm. Um, and I felt a tap on my shoulder, and I like sat up and there was nothing there, but it was physical, like I felt it. And I almost feel like that was, like, the ushering in of like spirituality in my life, or, like, coming back into this experience of actively engaging with my beliefs. Because I used to talk to God. When I was younger, I did all the time, and it was never, like, a thing. Like, I was just like it was just a thing. I just naturally did. Because 'cause I've always been someone who's engaged with that aspect of existence, of reality. It's never been far off to me. And I've always been someone who's like believed in all of the mythical and things you could believe in, like mermaids, yep, unicorns, yeah, dragons, yes, elves, fairies, yes. Like I've never questioned it. I never question it when people tell me that about a mythical thing that exists. I always just like accept that it exists. Because it's like, why wouldn't it? I never think to be like, no, that doesn't exist. I don't think I've ever done that, because that's just not the way my brain works. It just accepts that it exists. And I feel the same way about other beliefs. Like, um, I believe that all of the gods and goddesses that are part of the Hindu, yeah, like religion, I believe that they all exist. And I believe that the Christian God exists. And I believe that all of the Egyptian gods exist and all the Greek, like I just believe it all. Uh, but belief for me is it's hard to explain. No, it's not hard to explain. Belief for me is like I just simply accept that everything is and everything can be, and then I choose what I would like for my life and what works for the world that I want to create. Um, Not just for myself, but for the everybody that I can create for and help with. So yeah, I would never. I'm not the type of person who would ever um, feel like because I believe in one thing, this can't also be. It doesn't need to be either or with me. I feel like it can all exist at once because it's personal. And ultimately, I think we're all talking about the same source of love and safety and home that we find when you do have an actually loving relationship with your belief system. So, yeah, but I, like, had my spiritual awakening in the middle of 2020. I'm sorry, my brain goes all over the place. I was saying I made a video about eczema earlier today, and I was saying that I'm pretty sure I'm not I'm somewhere on the spectrum because I just, like, my brain just goes all over the place, and I can't control it. I really would like to keep it in line, but it just doesn't work that way. So I hope that this is making sense and that you're able to follow me, but I know that it's like, "Ah, ah." But anyways, I had my spiritual awakening in 2021, I think, yeah. It started with me meditating. So, no, it started because I started to do an alkaline vegan diet because and it was not for any spiritual reasons or anything like that. It was because I have eczema, and so I was trying to heal that. So I was like, "Okay, let me try this." And I was just trying to get my health together because 'cause I've always had, like, health things, so I'm trying to not have to rely on pharmaceuticals so much because it's expensive, and I just don't wanna have to rely on other things to heal me. I wanna be able to be in charge of my own health. So that's why I started that, and then I was having to self-isolate because my dad caught COVID, so I was, like, at home a lot, all by myself, so I was journaling, and then I started doing meditation, but and I tried manifestation because I wanted to get this job, and manifestation, I think, had come up because I had started meditating, just because I was, like, trying to be healthier, and I was, like, not looking at meditating as a spiritual thing, I was looking at it as, like, a health thing, because I was also working out at the time, so I would work out, and then I would meditate, and then I would journal to my ancestors. Yes, yes, yes. Oh, so okay, but why would I do that? I must have learned something about spirituality, because why was I journaling? Because I was also like, I think I also journaled to my spirit guides, and I had never heard of the term spirit guides before this era of spirituality that's happening right now. So I must have, I don't know what it was. Sorry, I don't remember what the introduction was to all of this, but May, June is when I, like, had an awakening. And then from there, just kind of deep dived into it. And, by August, I had a big friend breakup and then began to spiral into a really difficult era. And I think maybe it was a dark night of the soul. I don't know. I really don't know. It was just a hard time. But during that time, I began to be introduced to tarot readings. Um, and at the same time, I was discovering my own gifts for being able to read. And what I now kind of understand to be a gift of mediumship, which I didn't understand back then. And that's a really recent discovery of me even feeling comfortable saying that. But that's what I take it as now, but, yeah, I began to be introduced to tarot readings back when back in July, when I first went to go visit my mom, who was in Tulum at the time, and I was really depressed, and I knew that something was wrong with my friendships, but I didn't know what I was gonna do about it, and I'd already had a hard year, and yeah, so tarot readings came into my life, and I think the first tarot readers I found were Kino Tarot and Esso Tarot, who I still really love, and I will say that there's nothing wrong with them. It was not them, and for a lot of the readers, it was not the readers, it's the attachment to it, and it's funny because 'cause I'm now in a phase of my life where I've got a real detachment thing, like, I'm not really attached to much, and, like, in some ways that's nice, but in other ways it's like, "Oh, I might need to reel it in and get, like, at least some attachments," you know, but, when you're a little too detached, I don't think it's actually a problem, it's just I'm not used to it, and it's kinda strange to see myself be so, like, just I don't know, just not really it's not that I don't care, but kind of. And when it's like this extreme, sometimes it's a little troubling, but there's no actual trouble. But anyways, so see, I get distracted so easily. But what was I saying? Yeah, Kino Tarot, Esoterra. So I started watching their readings. I can't remember the first one that I watched. It might have actually been Bahati Life that I found first. One of them. Either way, the introduction was not bad. I wasn't watching, like, anything super toxic or anything like that. Um, and I was actually just intrigued because they were saying things that kind of resonated, but I would think I was just more so intrigued by the stories that they were telling, and because I was interested in them and because I wanted that. I think that's what it was. Oh, well, I was noticing that first I was seeing 4s a lot, so I was like, "What?" And I was, like, having, like, an actual moment. I was like, "I'm seeing 4 every time I look at the thing." So that was, like, a thing. I remember that, and I just remember hearing, like, Esoterra. I think it was Esoterra. It could have been Kino, though. I think it was Esoterra, though, and, like, I was watching every single one of the piles because I was, like, going from each of them, and they were all feeling like a progression, and I was just interested, and I was like, "Oh, well, I think I had an interest in living a life that like what she was talking about, but I'm not sure if they actually resonated or not. I really don't remember. But this is where, like, recognizing whether something resonates or not is important. But I wasn't at the point. I didn't care that much. I didn't know what tarot readings were at that point enough to know like this is like your energy. I was just listening and I was like, oh, this is interesting. And then I remember I saw a Bahati Life reading that I really liked, and I was like, "Oh, I really want this." But at that time, it was just showing me energy that I liked and that I would want, but I don't think it was a whole lot of what was actually in my energy. And now that I think about it, I think that was actually a good thing because my energy was not great at the time. Like, I was definitely going through an awakening, so in that sense, it's positive because I'm entering into a new phase, a new experience, new timeline, whatever you wanna call it. Um, but I was depressed, and I was recovering from assault and from a breakup, and I was aware that I was going to be ending friendships that I didn't really think I was ever going to end, and a lot was shifting very, very, very quickly. So, if I was introduced to readings that were actually telling me what was going on in my life, I don't know how that would have fared. Like, none of the readings that had gotten introduced to when I began my spiritual journey and, like, when I first started listening to tarot, that it was not at all, my own energy. It was definitely a future energy. They were definitely future readings. They were not current energy readings, which is interesting because I've never thought back this much to, like, that time. I'm only thinking about this now because 'cause I'm trying to talk about tarot addiction, but yeah, I never even put that together, but yeah, they were never current energy because it was never negative, and that's the important thing to note first. Yeah, it was never negative and it was never toxic. Because I was also way too new to tarot to have, like, been hearing a bunch of toxic things and been like, "Oh, yeah, this is something that I would be interested in." Like, I eh, I had to the way that for tarot for me, because I am somebody that even though I'm interested in the dreamy aspect and the mythical and mystical aspects of life, I still do have a very grounded kind of logical side to me, and I think that has to do with my Capricorn South node and just I've got some earth energy in my chart, so I do have that groundedness and I have air energy. So I'm not gonna just believe something ridiculous or something toxic if just off the bat, it would have to be there would have to be context and history behind it to get me into an energy where I'm accepting of things that aren't good for me. So that's how it worked with tarot. Like I had great experiences first, and it was really experiences that just stimulated my curiosity. And I think it was really important that I got introduced to tarot because it led me to understand a gift that I have, and it helped me to feel validated in my feelings about the universe and about the world and about things about understanding that life is much more vast than, what we've been told and all of these things. So in that sense, it was super, super important. And I'm so grateful for all of the readers that I got to watch because a lot of them were like kind of guiders for me through the beginnings of my spiritual journey. And especially through the darkest times when I felt really alone and just really down. But also, it's so funny because the darkest times were also some of the brightest in terms of just discovery when it comes to spirit and beginning to rebuild my relationship with spirit. Oh, and so this is the thing. With tarot, I was rebuilding my relationship with spirit, and eventually I'll start talking about God, but I wasn't using God then because God has been a traumatized term for me. So it took me a while to get to the point where I felt comfortable even saying God again, and even now it's a distance relationship. I believe in God, but it's not God that I talk to the most, it's spirit. And I do consider them separate energies. And there's nothing wrong with God or God's energy, but I just feel safer and more seen and more comfortable expressing myself uh, intimately with spirit. And I just don't feel as reflected, I guess, or I guess I don't know, like, I feel reflected in God and in God's light, but it's just something that I still am building up, you know? It's like a relationship takes time, and I'm still building up that trust and that safety again in God's energy or in just having a dynamic with God because it had been so traumatized. So I just need to take my time with that. But with spirit, um, it's I just feel close. It's like it's just yeah, I just feel close and I feel safe and it's never been a thing. And you know what I think it also is that even as a kid when I would speak to God, it it's not the way I speak to spirit. Like it was always in a scared way. And I think that the way that I think I spoke to spirit as a child, I just don't think that I remember it because I do have memories of speaking out loud. I mean, I always speak out loud, but I do have memories of speaking out loud and speaking to God. But I think that's I'm speaking to spirit, and I think that I unfortunately got a really um, like tailored experience with God and how to speak to God in a really oppressive perspective that's not accurate of the potential of what your relationship can be like with a God energy, with the God that I was interacting with. But I just got a bad I got a bad experience. And so I'm rebuilding that relationship now and I'm in such a better place. I'm in such a better place. And I'm very happy about that because I do like interacting with God too and being in God's energy as well. Um, and it's not the Christian God, I don't think, but I do think that they have a similar and there's a line of connection because yeah, but I don't think it's not the same energy anymore. It's definitely not the energy of my childhood. I haven't, like, gone back to that faith. It's not that. It's something completely different, and I think it could actually have always been the same God, but just perhaps now without the layer of institution, without the layer of religion, which completely changes the relationship, and thank God. I'm so much happier now. But anyways, what was the point of all that? I was building up my relationship with spirit and spirituality and the universe and my ancestors while I was watching tarot. And a lot of my progression and my steps happened at the same time as I was watching tarot readings and getting deeper and deeper into tarot. And I began to develop an addiction for it. Like it became my roadmap for how I would live life and how I would navigate, especially once I decided to um, drop out of university. So when I ended my friendships, that was in August 2021. Then I started questioning whether I wanted to finish university in September. And I almost didn't. And I almost went to this ashram that I did end up going to, but the next year. This ashram, um, and just going there. Like I said, I was in the middle of a spiritual awakening and it's really not a joke. Like I would love to talk to other people who have gone through it because I haven't I don't have anybody in my personal life. Well, actually, I do, but we just don't have the same experiences, obviously. It's unique to everybody. But yeah, like spiritual awakenings really are not a joke. Like they turn your life on its head and nothing is stable and nothing is like certain anymore. Everything is up for debate and everything must be questioned, and so you have to rake through it all. And so I was in my last year of university when I began to have this awakening, and it made me question everything. And so and yeah, I ended all my friendships, and then I was like and then school was, like, up next, and I, like, fought myself to finish the 1st semester of university, and then but by the 2nd, I had quit my job that I had, and I had decided I was moving, and I had decided I was taking a break from university. So a lot collapsed, and tarot was like one of the main like things that was sticking that I could rely on, mainly because it had nothing to do with me. So it was going to be there. Of course, it was going to be there because it wasn't connected to my life, but it felt connected to me because by now I had learned that tarot is predictive and that it's connected to your energy and blah blah blah. So all of those things began to inform my relationship around it, and I began to have a really strong attachment to it. And it felt like a piece of me every time I would see it on my screen. And my YouTube feed began to feel like the way that spirit spoke to me, like the main way that I spoke to my spiritual team. And it felt like my like gateway to the spiritual world, my YouTube feed and like my social media and just my digital presence overall felt like my gateway to the spiritual world. And so everything that I saw, I began to take very seriously. In every reading I received, I took very seriously and I digested the entire reading, not using my discernment to be like, "Oh, yeah, this and not this," and everything. I accepted everything, and I was just looking for any sign of where to go next and what to do next, and it was like my guiding light, but it wasn't healthy at all. Um, but it didn't come from a place of trying to be unhealthy, and it wasn't the reader's faults at all, because I wasn't engaging with toxic readers at that time at all. It was just what was happening. I was just in a hard place, and it was what I had to hold on to. And I'll also say that I've struggled with addictions before. When I was a teenager, and when I was actually more so when I was in middle school, but even through some of my high school years, I struggled with addiction with shopping. I had a shopping addiction. I don't know how I got the money. Like I don't know what I don't know. I was really like savvy with finances because I would go shopping if not every day, but every weekend for sure. And I would just go raking through sale racks, buying a bunch of stuff that I didn't need. And I literally had a shopping addiction as like a 12-year-old. And it's not funny, but it's funny looking back now, but back then it was very serious. But because it's not the type of addiction that's like drugs, I didn't view it as that serious. And of course, my mom's busy. She's being a single mom. My sister's busy living her own life. So nobody's really like recognizing it as a problem, though they did mention like, you shop a lot, blah, blah, blah. But it was never going to be like she has a problem, but I did have a shopping addiction, and I beat that when I was in high school, probably mostly because I just didn't have money like that anymore. I don't know, I lost my, like, savvy money skills, something in my birth chart changed, and then I also had, like, diet addictions, like, addictions to just being on different diets and addictions to workout plans, and we've had addiction in my family, so it's not surprising, but I've struggled with addiction, so I know that I had a tarot addiction because I recognize the signs, so yeah, I definitely had a tarot addiction, and I remember, like, kind of rock bottom for me being when I actually had started to get my own decks because at the same time, I was recognizing that I had a gift for reading, but I can't read for myself, or I don't read for myself because it's just, like, I can't like, who can take their own advice? I don't know anybody who can. But, yeah, so I was pulling cards one day in December of, I think, 2021, and I pulled, like, a bunch of cards, and I got this message, and I just, like my heart sank to my stomach, and I was, like, so overwhelmed emotionally by the message and made to be so upset and all of these things, and my sisters were like, "What's wrong?" And I was, like, crying about it, and I just felt like my future was doomed because of what I saw in the cards, and my sisters, had to sit me down and be like, "It's not that serious, and, like, this is a problem. If it affects you this seriously, it should not be able to do this to you." And it was a harsh and rude awakening and wake-up call, and then actually was it literally that following the next month, I think I kind of had, like, a bit of a scare with, um, just spirituality in general in relation to my family and things like that, so I had a lot. I hit rock bottom, and I think that that happened because spirit was like, "You have to be careful," you know? Like, and during that time, I was also, like, obsessed. My shopping addiction kind of came back in the form of crystals and and decks, like tarot decks and oracle decks. So that was making, like, a comeback. There were just a lot of things. And sorry, I'm all over the place, but it's just because I can't remember everything, but a lot of things were rearing its head to show that I was getting into an unhealthy relationship with spirituality that didn't have anything to do with my actual beliefs and just more to do with attachment to being guided and to having some type of stability in the middle of what I think I can confidently say it was probably like a dark night of the soul, whatever you would call it. I was in a dark place. I was at rock bottom for a long time. You just don't hit rock bottom and then immediately get back up. You're at rock bottom trying to figure out how to get out of rock bottom for a while, and I was there for a long time, and in that time period, a lot of other addictions reared their heads. Like, I also faced, weed addiction, like, to edibles, not to smoking because I have asthma, but to edibles, and I didn't it took me a while to accept that about myself. There are so many different things that were coming up in the middle of me also becoming the happiest I've ever been and the most true to myself I've ever been. It was the extreme a lot of extremes in the negative matched with a lot of positive extremes. Like, the dropping out of, university was not a negative. That was actually a real positive because I was burnt out, and I didn't feel any passion towards English. I'd stopped writing almost altogether, and I had lost my inspiration. I had lost my spark. Dropping out of university, I went to Tulum. I started doing readings there for other people, and I began to gain such confidence. I became an entrepreneur. Like, it's so complicated with spirituality. It's so complicated because I had to detach from tarot as a listener, but also not detach so much that I deny myself of a gift that I have that would then inform the next phase of my life and shape these experiences. There were just so many things, but yeah, I had a tarot addiction. I had a tarot addiction, I had a crystal addiction, and in Tulum, all of my crystals broke or I lost them all. And that was like a huge sign for me. I just accepted it. I was like, "Oh, okay." Like, this is being taken from me clearly because and what I would say was the most dangerous during my tarot addiction time was the love messages because I'm already somebody who is highly susceptible to love messages because I am somebody who is looking for my person. So anything that has anything to do with that is very meaningful to me. And in tarot, what they get you with is that the love messages are very strong and they take love very seriously. And I'm somebody that takes love very seriously. So to hear somebody talk about love in that way was super affirming to me because I was like, oh my God, you really are picking up on my energy. That is how I really like it's that serious to me. It's my life mission, it's my life goal. This is what I want. Blah, 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 blah. So it really fed into that desire to be with somebody, to be with a partner. And at that time, it wasn't healthy because I still had so much. I still have so much. to learn and to understand about myself, and so I was not ready to be with the person even though I would have loved to have been. But and I didn't think at the time, I thought I was ready, but I held on to, like, the different messages around, "Oh, well, they're coming soon," and blah, 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 and when they wouldn't come, then I would feel incredibly disappointed, and I would feel very let down, and it took a lot for me to not let that affect my relationship with spirit altogether, where I stopped believing, right? Because that could easily happen. And actually, the way that I fought that, I think, was actually just through how much I talked to spirit and how much I talked to my ancestors and my spiritual team. Like, when I was disappointed, I would talk to them about it, and I would just and I it wouldn't be, like, in a super sweet way. It would be, like, I was still traumatized by my relationship that I had with the religious expression, the Christian religious expression of God when I was a child, so I was still shy in the way that I would speak to spirit and my spiritual team, and, like, I would basically be apologizing as I aired my grievances. You know, when you're speaking like that, where you're like, "Sorry, but I feel this way, but I'm sorry, and, like, I know that I'm saying I shouldn't be speaking at all, but can I say this?" Like, it was just very meek and not in a positive way. Um, uh, but I would talk to them still, and it was through that process that I still remained connected to my spiritual team, even though I felt constantly let down and disappointed because of tarot readings. Because my spiritual team was not telling me in dreams and sending me messages in my own soul that I was going to meet my soulmate or anything like that. I was getting it from readings. And I was just deciding that that was my message because I wanted it to be my message, not really because it resonated, but because it's what I wanted. And because that's how I had been introduced to tarot, I expected that that was what was true. I'd been introduced to tarot through a feeling of connecting to messages that I wanted to be for me, even though they did not match how my current reality. If they were my messages, they were far off in the future on a potential timeline that it wasn't necessarily guaranteed that I would align with. It was just a potential future reading, right? But it wasn't guaranteed to be my future. There's so many paths you can end up on, and they all shift depending on like every single different move you make and one thought that you have, and then you have this next thought and it leads to this. You know, nothing's guaranteed. And because I had not come to the point where I understood all of the nuances of that yet, everything just felt like being lied to and played to and betrayed by my spiritual team and by spirit and by, and I wasn't including God at this time, so by God, and so by, yeah, just by spirit and my spiritual team. And I had already gone through experiences of being let down because during university I was supposed to travel abroad and I didn't get to do that, so there's just a lot of betrayal and letdown and like abandonment feelings that were being re-triggered through this tarot addiction that mirrored different experiences of feeling abandoned and let down and betrayed in my life through actual experiences. And I think that they were all meant to happen at the same time to kind of force me into like a lot of shadow work. Just like a lot. Just a lot, and just get comfortable with detachment from the outcome. I really, really had to get comfortable with detachment. And if anything, having addictions and then fighting them will get you comfortable with detachment because you just have to learn to let it go. Let it go and move on to a new way, or move on to just anything and live your life, even if you don't know what you're heading towards. And I've really, really had to learn how to do that. And I have not mastered it, but I'm doing it actively every day. um, and I went through a phase of just I couldn't watch tarot readings because they were not healthy for me. Like, I knew it would be a problem if I watched one. I'm now at the place where I can watch them and I don't really take them seriously at all. They're entertainment for me, which is what they should be. Because even though tarot is serious and it is a gift, and it's a gift for some people, for other people they weaponize it and use it as something bad, um, that just digs into enabling people to, follow paths and mindsets that are not healthy for them. But it is a gift, and I give tarot readings, so I know that. But it you do need to have a certain level of detachment to the point where it is just for fun. Like, you're getting this because you just want something fun, right? It's not This is not the guidance of your life that's going to save your life. That's not what tarot should be, because you have the messages within you. We're talking to your spirit. As a reader, when I'm doing readings, I'm not like having God whisper in my ear and be like, "Tell her this." And that's not I don't know everybody else's experiences, but for me, it's not like that. It's intuitive in, like, the plainest sense of the word, where it's just a feeling, right? And it should only ever be confirmation of what's happening for you and what's true for you. That's why, especially picket cards online on YouTube, they're general messages for a reason. They can't be super tailor specific to your life, because it's not your personal reading. For a collective. It's a collective of energy that's going through this at this specific time. And maybe they're so tuned in that they pick up something specific from your storyline, and then something specific from that storyline, or whatever. But ultimately, it should not be something that you're using to map out and plan out your life. And I've had to go through the several layers of detachment from that, and I'm still working on it. Like, I'm still learning. I'm still having to well, now I'm gonna actually have to actively do this. But I have to actively stop myself from going onto the Light Seers online tarot deck and choosing pick a card and seeing what card I get when I wanna make a decision. Like, I have to there's a lot of, like, unpacking and detachment that I still have to do, but we do need to do it, because ultimately, it's not telling us anything that we don't already know, you know? And so going and feeding off of these energies and attaching ourselves so heavily to whatever these people say, or whatever your cards are saying to you, it's not good. It just makes you feel like you have to use a device to connect with spirit when spirit is within you, you know? And I'm only saying this because I really deeply understand. I deeply understand, because I'm somebody that I love spirit. I love the universe. I love my ancestors. I love my spirit guides. I love spirituality. I do. I love that this exists. I love that the world is not just this, that it is also all of this. It means so much to me. So, any avenue to connect deeper to that is very meaningful to me, and I take it very seriously. And I'm somebody who is prone to getting really obsessive about things, and it works for me in some contexts, and in others it doesn't, and it results in addictions. But with spirituality, I'm still learning. I've had to learn. I'm still learning how to recognize that it is literally all within. If I want anything, if I want to know how to do anything, if I want to see anything, I just need to speak to spirit. I just need to look within. I just need to talk out loud. That's how it works for me. I just need to talk out loud to spirit. Like, I just need to that's how I channel. I just talk out loud, right? And that's how it happens. That's how I feel closest to spirit. Um, just talking. That's how I build my relationship. I don't need anything else. I don't need the cards. I don't need any other person giving me a reading. I don't need a crystal. I don't need a book on it. I don't need this sermon. I don't need anything. I just need me and spirit, and that's it. And growing to accept that is growing to accept that you are enough and you are deserving and you are worthy of being loved and being empowered. And I think that's where we have to get to. And my sister said it best when she said that tarot readings can end up becoming disempowering, because they make you feel like you don't have the answer, like you are not enough. And that should never be the case, and that will never be the case. It's never revealing to you anything you didn't already know. And I'm saying that as a reader. When I give readings, I'm never telling anybody anything they don't know. It's your energy. You know everything. I'm just saying what spirit wants to emphasize about you, what spirit wants to emphasize about your life. and it's never to be taken too seriously. Take it with a grain of salt. And whatever really hits you, just examine why it hit you. You don't need to take that thing and be like, this is my truth. You should look at how it made you feel and examine the feeling and where that comes from. But you don't need to take anything on. You don't have any obligation to. Even if you get a personal reading and it tells you this, and that, you don't need to accept any of it. It's simply just it's your choice. And that's because nobody can tell you how to be spiritually. Nobody can tell you who you are. Nobody can tell you anything about your relationship with spirit or your relationship with God or anything. It's personal. No one knows anything about it but you, and no one can tell you how to do it but you. And there's no right way and there's no wrong way. Everything is spiritual. So tarot addictions, that's spiritual. That's spirituality. That's a part of spirituality. That's why I went through it, I'm sure. It's a part of it. It's why so many of us go through it. Addictions are part of spirituality. The bad things, it's all spiritual. We just have to learn how to walk in the balance and how to be kind to ourselves and how to move from a place of kindness and compassion and understanding and grace and lovingness for other people, and not force other people onto our belief systems and not force ourselves into other belief systems. Just let yourself be. Let yourself be however you naturally feel you are. Don't force yourself to believe anything you don't want to believe. Don't force yourself to take on anything you don't really want to take on. And question everything. That would be my greatest advice. Question everything and be really, really skeptical, because I think that that'll put you in a good position to maybe not be so susceptible to addictions and things like that and being pulled in by the extremes, because there's extremes in everything, and being able to find balance and recognizing that it's personal. Your beliefs are personal. It's about you, it has nothing to do with anybody else. And so your beliefs shouldn't be hurting anybody else because they shouldn't have anything to do with anybody else. And your beliefs shouldn't need to be validated by anybody else. And they should be, you should be able to be completely quiet about your belief system and still feel good about it. You shouldn't need to be seen or heard in order to feel valid in your beliefs. It's personal. It's super personal. And that's the only way you're ever going to feel fulfilled. Okay, I won't say anything final, but for me, the only way that I am able to actually feel fulfilled in my relationship with spirit and in the life that I'm living is because I have a personal relationship, because it has nothing to do with anybody else. Because everybody else could disappear, because new age spirituality could go out of trend, because all of this could fall away, and talking to spirit makes my life brighter. I feel more alive. I feel better. I feel happier. I feel more like myself because I talk to spirit, because talking to spirit is natural to me, because it's talking to myself, because it just is. It just makes sense. It's the one thing I don't have to question. And every time I question it, I feel ridiculous because it's the one thing that I know for sure. And it's the one thing I feel so passionate about. But it's personal. And I would never, ever try and say that anybody else should be doing the same, or that this is the right way to do anything or anything like that, because I don't know what would work for anyone else. Because I literally don't live in your reality. And your reality is something else. Like gardening might be your version of talking to spirit, or in your reality, learning about quantum physics might be your way of talking to spirit. Like everybody has a different way. And what I consider talking to spirit for you might be playing video games. It might be cooking. It might be traveling the world. It might be hanging out with your friends. And you could have no relationship to the concept of spirit or spirituality or God. And you could still be walking a divine or spiritual life from my perspective, because it's all subjective. And at the end of the day, all that matters is that you feel happy and that you're loving people and you're kind. Nothing else matters. whether you believe in God, whether you wear crystals, whether you read tarot, whether you don't read tarot and you read the Bible every day, whether you go and pray this many times, whether you go and do this, none of that matters. None of that matters. What matters is your heart and how you treat people and how you treat yourself. And that's it. And if you're being kind and you're being a good person, I feel like you're good. And you don't need to have any type of belief system that you don't wanna have. And you don't need to take on anything you don't wanna take on. You don't need to believe in anything. You don't need to believe in anything. Just, are you being a good person? Are you being kind? Are you being open-hearted and open-minded? Period, in my opinion. And I think that just makes life way easier. We don't have to focus on what other people believe and making sure that people believe this or don't believe that, and we just focus on ourselves. Then we ultimately actually become more involved in community and become more kind and more gracious and all that good stuff. So, I don't know. This video went all different types of places. I'm low key about to call this my testimony. Because my YouTube feed has been like, it's been overindulged with half like super, super heavy Christian content, but family vlog style or like relationship style because I'm a lover. So I love watching people in relationships and I love watching family vlogs because I just love that stuff. But not family vlogs anymore, like in that sense, because I feel like we've moved past the era of family vlogs because we recognize that the kids maybe aren't that safe. But I like to watch like vlogging couples who are like new parents and things like that. But then I don't really watch like the kids and things like that because I just start to feel guilty at this point. But I used to when I was a kid. When I was younger, I was really big into that because I loved them. And as a kid, I wasn't thinking that the kids were being, exploited or anything like that. But I realized that a lot of the new couples that I've like really started to love, mainly because of YouTube Shorts, like like a lot of the couples that I love are like Christian couples. And I would have never noticed that um, until like I saw their actual YouTube videos versus their shorts. And their videos are more, they talk about that. And I found it refreshing though, because I'm like, oh, like I can love them and I can love to watch them even if I have different beliefs. And I try to avoid watching things from them where I know that maybe they'll say something that might hurt me, like, because sometimes they'll do Q&As and somebody will ask a question being like, "How do you feel about gay people?" Even though we know what the answer will be, and it's like, "Why did you have to ask that question?" And then they try to answer as carefully as they can, and they're like, "I don't really agree, but I still I don't hate anybody, and I love everybody, but I just don't agree with that lifestyle." And then, I start to feel like shit. So, I try to avoid that and just take the good for what it is. Take what resonates, leave what doesn't. Healthy level of detachment. You don't have to have the full thing. You know what I mean? You can take what works and then be grateful enough for what works to leave behind the stuff that doesn't. Don't try and force the whole thing to match. That's what I would try and do a lot with tarot readings too. It just doesn't work that way. It's not how life works. And that's a good thing. You shouldn't want the whole thing to fit. It's a diversity. It's a bit of everything. Humans are unique. They're not just one thing. We're a mix of a whole bunch of interesting things that make us all special and diverse and unique in our own ways. And that's how your life is too. And so maybe you watch these people and you like them for this, but you have a different belief system from them, and that's okay. And you watch these other people and you like this, and and I'm just talking about, I guess, how you engage with social media, but even in real life, it would be nice if you can have relationships with people, who have different belief systems and all of that, and still be able to live amongst each other and support and love each other without judgment. And hopefully their belief systems wouldn't be violent towards who you are. But being in a space where you can all just accept that we all experience life and spirituality, whatever that means to you, in your own unique ways, and that that's okay. And that as long as you're not forcing anybody else to believe what you think or making somebody feel like they are less than because they don't believe what you believe, and are not, you know, committing harm and violence against people because of your systems of belief, then, like, cool, right? I think so. Yeah, that's it though. I think I'm going to go now. And it was good doing this. I was going to say this reading. It was good doing this message. Bye.